That's what I'm gonna put it real simple. I think too many black men want to be white men. And, no, just listen to me. Just hear me out. Just hear me out. I'm not saying y'all, because y'all don't.
I don't agree with that.
But what I'm saying is when they look at Donald Trump, the thing that they aspire to, they don't give a fuck about Donald Trump's policies. They don't know Donald Trump's policies.
Hers either.
Agreed. So they're not thinking about policy. But they love the way Donald Trump moves in the world. Think about how much Donald Trump got rapped about before he became a Republican and it wasn't cool to do anymore. Black people want to be rich like everybody else. Black people want to be famous and powerful like everybody else. And for most people, and especially black men right now, the image of that is a white man. Donald Trump is who we want to be, and that's why Donald Trump gets the votes from people even when it's against their own interests. That's what fucks me up. If you want to be Donald Trump because he helps you, fine. Vote for Kamala Harris if she helps you, fine. But that's not what they voting on.
I think that's a horrible surface assessment.
I
don't know. So why Obama won?
We believed in him.
Which means it's not about wanting to be a white man.
But
Belief. He resonated with the people. They believed in his message. Yes. They believed in his marketing. Nobody could tell you they voted for Obama because his policy was X, Y, and Z. Because most people are not that politically sound.
Yeah,
they don't know policy. They believed in this man.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, yo. I'm just allergic to that bullshit. Like, really rubbed me the wrong way. And it was surgical in what he said, and I'm really not even sure if what he was saying was from his heart or if it was calculated to really seep into the minds of those who are marginalized. Because I went through the comments and I'm like, let's see if these things, and overwhelming Ish is a moron. Mark is always 100% right. He's absolutely right. If you ask these people about politics of Trump or Harris, they couldn't tell you anything because that's not what they're looking at. What he said on the surface was true, but it was diabolical underneath it all. What he's saying is any sort of semblance of power, prestige, you're not black. And that's a tactic that's often used by race baiters to say, oh, well, you hate yourself because you don't want to be black. And, it took me years to really unravel what that meant or why that hurt so much. It's just like they want to keep you in this prison. And it's hard to articulate that to people because when you start to put any slander towards the classification of being black, then it comes off as self-hatred. However, after doing some research and understanding where the term black comes from, it really shows what was at play here. Because it was a point in time where we rose up in the civil rights movement, and figures like Stokely Carmichael made it a point to say we're getting rid of the term Negro so that we can have a more empowered conversation, which in and of itself is a very powerful thing, it's warranted. We're trying to break free of the shackles of social classifications. So anybody with half a brain, they're gonna rock with that because they just see like, hey, this is us breaking free. However, if you think about it, you start to unravel what's going on here. Because if we're running from the term Negro, which in itself just means black, it's just a Spanish word for black, stems from the Latin word Niger. That term came from the mindset of people who wanted to put individuals, very specific individuals, into a classification in order to keep them as lifelong slaves. So in breaking free from the term Negro and going into black as a self-referential term, it still keeps you entrapped in a dichotomy between black and white. So when Mark Lamont says you want to be white, if you, in a sense, understand that blackness is a negative category, even if we put it on ourselves to call ourselves quote unquote black, it still puts us in a position where we are the lesser of the two. I don't believe that we are lesser. I have skin that is melanated thoroughly. I'm not afraid of my skin color. I'm not afraid of my culture that I've been steeped in. I'm with it. But understanding the rules of the game, I can understand why somebody would want to ascribe to being white. So let me read from this passage. The construct of Negro and the birth of racial identity. The term Negro originated from the Latin niger, meaning black, and entered the English lexicon through Spanish and Portuguese during the height of European colonization. While it began as a color descriptor, it evolved into a racial category specifically assigned to sub-Saharan Africans, particularly those targeted for enslavement in the transatlantic slave trade. See, unlike earlier systems of slavery, which were often based on class, religion, or war, European powers developed a race-based system that tied slavery to heredity, permanence, and visible traits. Color became the marker of enslavement. Blackness, Negroness, was constructed as a symbol of inferiority, while whiteness was defined in contrast as freedom, purity, and superiority. So when Marx says so many black men want to be white, I can understand both sides. I can understand somebody on the other side of things saying, what, well, you don't want to be with us? But on the other side, the terms were labeled in a way that they are not equal. In a sense, blackness means to be inferior in the way that they classified things, not the way I classify it. So this is where it becomes difficult for people to break free, because it's not necessarily explicitly told to you that the term black is a classification imposed upon you. Negroness is a term imposed on you. See, we were sold the idea that this is something we adopted as our own, that we decided to call ourselves black, but this was put again in our lexicon through a series of shifty moves. So in a sense, you think blackness means the color of your skin. That's not the case. Because in the time when Negro was created as a classification for slaves, not all dark-skinned people were considered Negroes. Groups such as Indians from India, Moors, Pacific Islanders, and indigenous Americans were placed into separate racial categories despite similar complexions. The label Negro was not simply about skin tone, but about geography, religion, perceived capacity for servitude. It became a tool for social control and economic exploitation. So in the time that Negro came about, it wasn't necessarily about being a dark-skinned person. It was about a social classification in order to highlight who was in the enslaved categories. So there were people who were dark-skinned, and they didn't necessarily consider themselves Negroes. They had national identities. They had cultural identities, so they didn't need this term of black or Negro. And that's the insidiousness of it, is because at a certain point, it got flipped on us to make it seem like it was just about the color of your skin and your place in society. So anybody who refutes it is going to be seen as a self-hating, denigrated person. So when Mark speaks up, you can feel in the room, they're like, oh my God.
No, just listen to me. Just hear me out. I'm not saying y'all, because y'all don't.
because we don't want to necessarily be white. We don't want our skin colors to be white. We want the ideals that are associated with whiteness, freedom, superiority. Don't care about purity, but we can see it without it actually being explicitly told to us. And that's what's crazy. And that's why I don't know if Mark is speaking from a point of, oh, well, you don't want to be black. And he's just speaking from that because I can understand that point. But if he's speaking understanding that these are classifications put on us by a class of people, not necessarily a race of people, a class of people, and you need to play your role as the lesser and the greater. And if he knows that and he's still saying that, then that shows a level of cruelty because he wants to keep the slave class in its place. So I think a lot of people are agreeing with his vibe, but like, y'all just want to be white, so y'all kind of lame. In thinking that these are equal terms on the basis of the skin color, because it really is it's an arbitrary thing to be born with white skin, or that's not something you get to choose. That's just something you're born with. So in essence, by rejecting your skin color just to be of another skin color for its privileges is kind of foolish. But when you understand that these terms were imposed upon you in order to keep you in a certain class of thinking, then being white or black is not a benefit to you, because you got to put your pants on the same exact way. So to continue on, to call oneself black in the 21st century is often seen as a declaration of pride, unity, and cultural strength. It is a term reclaimed from centuries of degradation, a deliberate rejection of the externally imposed label Negro, which was historically used to dehumanize, categorize, and subjugate people of African descent. Yet beneath this surface of empowerment lies a deeper paradox. While black appears to be self-determined, it is still tethered to the same system of racial classification that once made Negro a badge of servitude. The shift from Negro to black in the 1960s and 70s was a symbolic revolution. No longer would people of African descent be named by colonizers or filtered through the polite language of white supremacy. Black is beautiful. Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. These slogans marked a powerful inversion of meaning. What was once an insult became a declaration of value. However, while the meaning of the word changed, its function within the racial hierarchy did not. To understand this, we must revisit why the label Negro existed in the first place. It wasn't simply descriptive, it was prescriptive. It told the world how to treat the person bearing the label. Negro was created to designate a class of people suitable for exploration, dehumanization, and permanent servitude. It turned skin color into social destiny. The term black, while framed today as an act of self-definition, still operates within the same architecture. Society continues to associate blackness with danger, poverty, inferiority, or exoticism, even as individuals attempt to redefine it through pride, excellence, and creativity. And this is where it gets messy, because we feel as though we are trying to add respectability to our skin color, which is 100% understandable. Those in the realm of a Donald Trump and Elon Musk, they don't necessarily have to ascribe to blackness or whiteness. They can look on the outset as if they are black or white, as Elon Musk comes from Africa, sub-Saharan Africa to be exact. He doesn't have to dally in whether or not he's black or white. He just has money. So he's in a different class of things. He's not worried about the same thing that the average man is worried about. The illusion is that renaming oneself is enough to escape the system. But if the system still reacts to the visual code, the melanin, the hair texture, the inherited assumptions, then the renaming becomes a kind of semantic rebellion inside a locked room. The door hasn't been removed. It's just been painted. Moreover, the term black is still reactive, not entirely generative. It was born in opposition to whiteness. As long as whiteness exists as a normative center, blackness will remain defined in relation to it. This means that even the empowered identity of black is still framed within a binary created by the same forces that birthed Negro. But it is important to realize that pride in a label does not necessarily dismantle the structure that created the need for the label in the first place. True liberation may require more than reclaiming words. It may demand a reimagining of the entire framework that made these words necessary in the first place. Ooh. Until that happens, black will remain an elevated prison, a crown made from the same chains that once called us Negroes. I don't think there's anything else I need to say on this. If you disagree with me, please write it in the comments. I would love to hear from somebody who thinks what Marc Lamont said more or less valid. Please.